Every 33 hours, 1 million people are dropping into extreme poverty across the world. So that shows us just how much the world is diverging and inequality is growing, and it's really worrying.
Can we talk further about this reverse button that's been hit? Because it felt as though we were making some progress before the pandemic in conquering inequality. And at a country level, we were seeing that globally. But the concerns are also about even in developed nations, inside countries, you're seeing that extreme inequality. Just talk to us about those trends.
Yes. So over the last few decades, there had been good trends in terms also of inequality between countries. So that had been reduced. So the developing world, unfortunately, with the pandemic, has suffered. And one of the drivers for that has been vaccine hoarding by the rich nations. So having access to vaccinating large parts of the population meant economies could reopen faster, whereas the global south kept locked up for longer, and that has been part of the difficulty. And also all the increase in debt, the difficulty having enough fiscal space to support populations that were going through the difficult times. So that's, and within countries, different forms of inequality that were already there meant that the pandemic hit in very different ways. So women have been hit much harder, also ethnic minority groups, and you can see that, unfortunately, some of the effects of the pandemic will be there for years to come.
We often talk about twin crises, a pandemic, one that then is combined with the political outcome in a particular country, or some sort of an economic crisis as well. War in Ukraine has been waging. We know that's driven up energy prices, food prices. What are the ramifications in poorer parts of the world?
Yes, so I think we now have multiple crises, a poly-crisis, and in reality, those who are suffering most are the poorest, women, children. We have record levels of hunger, 193 million people in severe hunger conditions. I was in Somalia some weeks ago, seeing firsthand the conditions there. And really, people are running out of coping mechanisms. In the Horn of Africa, one person is dying every 48 seconds at the moment. And if it weren't for all the other crises, the world attention would be there. So we really need to focus on everything that's happening and respond, and we need to mobilize the resources. And what we're saying, there are some sectors that have really profited during this pandemic period, like food, energy, pharmaceuticals, technology companies. So let's look at how we make those profits benefit the whole. So looking at windfall taxes, for example, that's been discussed in many countries. Italy has introduced. So that's one possibility to mobilize resources to respond to the extreme cases that we're seeing.
The sectors that you single out, though, have faced various different challenges themselves. And even when it comes to energy companies, they have a huge energy transition if they want to hit climate goals. So the argument is that they need the funds for investment, not simply for taxation, for it to be rerouted elsewhere. I mean, food companies have been through pandemic trends. Some of that appetite has faded. Now they're facing inflation, which is driving down margins. And if you think about some of the other sectors that we're seeing, technology, we've got a tech rout, a huge sell-off taking place in the stock market as these companies contend with a big drop in demand as well, and potentially a recession. So how do you get those funds from companies that have done well that are now facing the other side of the coin and challenges in their own sectors?
Yeah, so all these measures have to be taken also country by country, looking at the particular circumstances. But investment won't stop. This increased taxation is not about, it's after investment has been factored in. But we need to think about people's lives right now. So it's hundreds of thousands of people who are really, in a battle for survival. So I think that needs to come first. And this is really our message here. We need to think about how extreme wealth, because there is extreme wealth. The hopeful part of all of this is that wealth exists in the world. It's just very badly distributed. So we need to think about how we have a rethink and tax wealth. Because we tax income, wealth is taxed in very few countries. So there is an opportunity there. It's small percentages, 2% to 5%. In fact, there's lots of millionaires, patriotic millionaires for humanity saying, tax us. So that's also individual wealth as well as the company taxation that I was talking about earlier.